Hi, I'm Jim McCann, founder of 1-800-Flowers. We created this podcast to share the wonderful people we get to interact with, we get to meet, we get to know, and most importantly, get to learn from. So I invite you to join us on this journey here on the Celebrations Chatter podcast. Anthony
Yes.
Scaramucci, good to have you with us this morning.
Well, it's great to be here, and I'm not embarrassed to tell people this. I look up to you, and you're one of my mentors, and I don't know. I'm just thrilled to be in your office, and congratulations on everything you've done. And
Thank you. It's a two-way street, Anthony.
I know, but I mean, listen, you are a representation of the American success story, but also Long Island. I have a lot of pride on Long Island, and I just love the fact that this is a Long Island company, and we're coming out to your viewers and listeners from Long Island. Just love it.
We are. So tell me, you have so many things going on.
Yeah.
You have Skybridge, you have the SALT conferences, busy family life, speaking appearances, TV appearances. You've got so much going on, and you've reinvented yourself several times and embraced crypto early, which is something we'll talk about for sure today.
Yeah.
What you're thinking about, I'm going to squeeze into that busy schedule, a lot of work, and produce another book?
I write these books actually for my kids. I know this sounds like corny, but the first book I wrote was called Goodbye Gordon Gekko. It was a play off of the old Wall Street movie. Sure. I was just explaining that you don't have to be a bad guy to make money. Okay, and I think you are obviously a big representation of that. And so the subtitle was How to Find Your Fortune Without Losing Your Soul. And this was at a time when Wall Street was in crisis. It was during the global financial crisis. And I don't know if anyone would ever buy my books. I always joke, Jim, that all of my books are international bestsellers. And if you don't believe me, come into my basement. I'll show you every copy I bought to make them bestsellers. And I have found that the way we grew up, and I think this is why you and I are close, or why we identify with each other, we grew up with very hardworking people. And we grew up with people that were aspirational. They want to go on welfare. They got to the country and they were like, okay, put me to work and I want to make something for myself and my families. And so you and I were able to take that sort of slingshot and launch ourselves into different businesses and different entrepreneurial careers. And we've had our successes, but if truth is to be told, every entrepreneur has tribulations. Every entrepreneur has setbacks or things that are not going well. Steve Schwartzman told me I started Blackstone as an investment bank. We couldn't get any clients. So we built, Pete Peterson and I decided, okay, we can raise money and put some money into a fund. Maybe we'll do a few LBOs, the largest private equity firm in the world. Okay, my point is,
started on the same floor as another black company.
Yeah, BlackRock.
Amazing.
Right.
Those
exactly.
two giant companies started on the same floor at the same time.
Right. But if you talk to Larry Fink, he had setbacks. He had to make adjustments. Yeah. If you talk to Michael Dell, who helped me start Skybridge, he was 29 years old or 28 years old, and his laptops were catching on fire on commercial aircraft. Okay, he had something wrong with the lithium battery connection to the laptop. Stock went from 40 to 7. And there was a lot of pressure on him. Jeff Bezos, 80% down in the stock, 90% down in the 2000 dot-com bubble. So I wanted to write a real story about what really happens when you're going for things. And so, I got annihilated at the White House. I got fired after 11 days. It was unceremonious.
But the last time we talked, Anthony, I brought that up as an example, and I bring it up to other people a lot when they talk about setbacks. You've been kicked in the teeth as much or more than so many others because you take chances.
Yeah, I'm moving. Yeah, I'm taking the risk.
You're not stationary.
Right.
But your biggest capability, your best quality is your ability to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and get on with it.
Well,
it's called resilience.
Coming from you, that means a lot to me, and I appreciate that. But there's a weird thing going on, and I know you can relate to this. I don't see myself as having any choice. Meaning, there's no safety net for me. I know there was no safety net for you. There's a lot of people relying on me, employees, family members, elderly parents, or now, my dad passed last year, but my mom, my sister. I'm like, hey, I fell on my face. There's no crying. There's no crying in sports, politics. Dust yourself off.
A lot of people with what happened, you got into the belly of the beast in the swamp.
Yeah.
You go to D.C.
It was brutal.
You have a bunch of good experiences. All of a sudden, you're head of communications at the White House. The place is a mess. Crazy things going on.
Mm-hmm.
General Kelly comes in and says, I need a clean slate. Now, some people would have curled up and faded into oblivion, thinking, I'm embarrassed here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be the punchline for this administration.
That was advice that I got from a lot of people, Jim.
I remember.
Yeah.
They said, go lay low. I heard a lot of people tell you that directly, and you didn't.
Right.
You turned a negative into a positive. That's resilience.
Somebody called me. I'm going to send my crisis communications PR guy. He's going to come help you. He came to see me. He says, okay, listen, this is an unmitigated disaster. This is a terrible embarrassment for you. I think you need to lay low, possibly move to Europe for a few years and then come back.
Yep.
I looked at the guy and said, Steve Colbert just invited me on the show. I'm going on the show. I don't care. And then when Colbert said, did you think you were going to last a long time in the White House? I said, well, longer than a carton of milk in the refrigerator. I didn't think I was going to get blown out before the milk spoiled.
But the ability to laugh at yourself.
Oh, 100%.
100%. Use this term.
For those of you that want me to stand up, I am standing. I just want to make sure you know that, okay? I mean, come on, what are you going to do?
You get it, that this is all... It's nice, but it's a little make-believe.
Okay, but when I say that Jim McCann gets it, and this is one of the reasons why I have tremendous love for you, you get it because you were there when you were trying to make payroll in a flower shop. I read your books.
Yeah.
You get it when you're trying to figure out how you got to adapt and pivot this business. You get it when this business starts as a phone business, it moves into the internet, and now you got to raise capital to grow the infrastructure to create a global internet business. You get it when you got to move into Harry and David or other products. And you get it because you know how fragile we all are. You get it because you know how improbable it all is. You get it that you're sitting here with me and you're like, we both have had some measure of success in the United States, but your great ancestors, okay, I can tell you about mine because my daughter's a singer. I'm working on her talent.
Not just a singer. She
is
is
pretty good.
Extremely accomplished.
Well, I appreciate that, sir, because she is very good, and she sings with Bocelli now. But the reason I was bringing her up is that I'm getting her Italian citizenship because I'm able to, the way the laws work. My
ancestors.
Yes, my grandfather wasn't a U.S. citizen apparently when my dad was born, so I'm able to get the citizenship, and I'm filling this out to help my daughter. But the lawyer came to my house and he said, listen, the Napoleonic Code in the Kingdom of Naples was well kept. Do you want to learn about your ancestors? I said, sure. So I brought my mother over. She's 87. He put up the laptop and he was going down the list of the different ancestors on both sides of the family. Okay, you ready? Great-grandfather, day worker. Great-great-great-grandfather, day worker. In 1803, I think it's 6 great-grandfathers ago, indentured farmer. Okay, so they worked the land and got paid in food and got paid in shelter. Okay, and so 200 short years ago, my ancestors were farming a piece of feudal land in the Kingdom of Naples, and fast forward, we're here in America creating these types of companies and jobs and aspiration. And you know this from your ancestors. You're not getting places like this in Europe because of the sclerosis of class or aristocracy, non-merit-based economies, right? Mm-hmm. And so, man, I know you're grateful. I know I'm grateful. So if you want to fire me from the White House, you want to blast me because I made a mistake allowing Sam Bankman-Fried to invest in my company, you want to ridicule me for bad performance, no problem, because I am living the American dream. And my old man, my father said to me when I got my job at Goldman Sachs, he said, I never want you to complain about the job. And I said, why is that, Pop? He goes, well, number one, you're indoors, you're out at direct sunlight, and there's no heavy lifting. So I don't want to hear boo from you. So my father, his dad was a coal miner. He responded to classified ads with his brothers to come out to Long Island to mine sand. He started as a laborer. He measured barges. He shoveled sand and stone. He taught himself how to operate a crane. He became the crane operator down there. Yep. And I got to tell you something, and this is a big, important part of my story, is you have core memories in life. Yep. John Zanetti, my guidance counselor at Port Washington High School, Schreiber High School, came to our house, 72 Webster Avenue, had a cigarello. My parents were chain smokers, so the house was just burning up with smoke and espresso.
Yep.
And they're sitting at the table, and Sinetti's smoking a cigarette. They're talking in Italian, and he says to my father, listen, he's a smart kid, meaning me. Do not send him to the state school. Not that it's not a good school, but I wanted to go to this private school called Tufts. And my father was like, okay, Toughs, is that how you spell it? And my father had no clue.
Yeah.
And he said, no, he got into the school. It's a very, very good school. Well, what's the tuition? $24,000 a year. So my old man said, well, he was making $32,000 at the time. He was like, okay, wow, the state school is like $4,000.
Yeah.
He says, okay, Signor Zanetti, thank you, blah-blah. He leaves the house. He says, he wants you to go to the private school. We're going to send you to the private school. About 2 days later, he handed me a check for $10,000. I said, what is this? He said, well, I cashed my union life insurance policy. I got the cash value of the life insurance policy. I don't really have the money to send you to this school. We're going to get you started. You're going to have to work, get a job, figure it out, blah, blah. But when my father handed me that check,
Yep.
the light went off in my head. I said, oh, my God, I can't disappoint him or my mom.
Yep.
I'm going to go to this school, can't afford this school. I'm going to get good grades. Let's see what happens. And I did. I got very good grades there.
Good enough to go to the Harvard Law School.
And then I ended up getting into Harvard. But I also got lucky there because
How'd you get lucky there?
Well, because the provost of Tufts was very close with the admissions office at Harvard. Those schools were 2 miles away from each other.
One was in Cambridge, one it wasn't.
One's in Somerville, right, exactly. And he was super tight with those guys. He's 90 years old today. I love him dearly. I took three of his courses.
So you went right from...
Went right from Tufts to Harvard.
Uh-huh.
And that was another big awakening because I was insecure. I had the grades and I was smart.
What about the money issue then?
Well, I didn't have the money for Harvard, but this is the beauty of Harvard, okay? And I will always say this, that I always give money back to Harvard for this. They gave me very low interest rate loans. I actually got a grant. Uh-huh. I actually was making money over the summer. My dad got, do you remember Joe Margiotta?
Sure.
Okay, so Joe Margiotta was very close to the head of my dad's union. And they went to him, they said, there's an Italian kid, he needs to get into this union to make $16 an hour so he can afford to go to Harvard. And Joe helped me get into that union, and may his soul rest in peace. And I worked on the dock. Mm-hmm. My father was operating the crane, I was working the hoppers,
yep.
And filling the trucks with crushed aggregate. And that helped me a lot. $16 an hour, you work 60 hours plus the overtime. And I was living at home, and I was building up a little bit of a war chest. But Harvard also gave you very low interest rate loans at that time.
Interesting.
It took me. I paid off those loans. I graduated in '89. I wrote in my diary, the day I pay off my student loans, I'm going to leave and start my own business. I paid off the student loans Memorial Day weekend, 1996. I left at the end of Goldman's fiscal year, which was in December at that time. So I left November 28th. I started my first business on December 1st, 1996.
And that was Oscar Capital?
Oscar Capital. That was Oscar Capital. And we did well. We got clocked in 1998, but we ended up selling that business to Neuberger Berman right after the terrorist attacks. I worked at Neuberger.
Neuberger could have walked away on your deal, and they didn't.
They did. They could have. Yeah, this is another interesting story.
So you go to Harvard Law School. You go right then to Goldman?
Yeah, right from Goldman. I was at Harvard Law School, Goldman. But again, awkward, rite of passage. I don't understand the lingo at Goldman. I don't understand how to act appropriately, dress appropriately.
So that's finishing school for you.
Yeah, it was brutal. It was brutal. I'm going to tell you the story because I think you'll enjoy it. I'm at the Goldman interview. I'm in 100% poly. I got the $90 suit from Cy Sims. It's black. Okay, it's probably double-breasted. I got 100% poly white shirt. I got a black thin tie.
You think you're looking
fantastic? Good. I thought it looked fantastic. I had the Capizios on, the cockroach killers, and I got the gold chains under the white poly shirt.
You always go undercover.
The hair's blown back. I got all kinds of hairspray in there, and I show up at the interview, and they're talking about the TED spread. They're talking about arbitrage, and I'm answering all the questions. Finally, the guy looks at me and says, "Listen, you look like a young Undertaker from Brooklyn, okay? I mean, you were the worst dressed person that we've ever met, okay? I was fully flammable for that job interview. I was wearing petroleum products, okay? Now, nothing needed to be ironed, of course, and you could have put it in the dryer, okay? Or the washer machine. He looks at me and says, I can't invite you to Goldman looking like this. You got to go buy natural fiber clothing and you got to get yourself dressed properly. I was mortified, Jim. I remember calling my mother, and you know my mother. What is he talking about? You look fantastic. I mean, she didn't know.
Only a mom.
Only a mom, right?
Yeah.
And so I changed, got my natural fiber clothing. I went down to Goldman, and I figured out a way to get the job.
Now, I remember, Anthony, that a guy that I think very highly of, and the whole world does now, but I met when he was a success, but not the success he is today, is Michael Dell, and he had a big influence on your career.
Oh, big time. No, he was he's a very kind guy, and I would encourage everybody to read. He's written 2 books, one recently, and it's about his success, but it's also about the way he thinks, okay? And he is an incredibly gifted operator, but he's also a kind human being. He's a little bit introverted. He's less introverted today at age 58, 59 than he was back then. Well, I just got lucky.
But he's taught himself a lot.
No question.
I mean, he starts in a dorm room at the University of Texas.
No question.
Changed his physical appearance.
Yes.
And he's look at how he's figured out business. I mean, he's in such a different business.
He's morphed into AI. He bought EMC, the storage company. But Michael said something to me that you'll appreciate because you think a lot like him. Okay, so Mike, I said to Mike, how did we get started? He said, well, I'm at the University of Texas. My mother and father want me to go into medicine. I think his father, somebody's an eye doctor or something like that. And I'm going to go into medicine. They're from Houston. And I got to buy a computer. And I go into this catalog, and I discover that I can buy the parts to the computer, assemble them in my dorm room, and it'll save me 30% from buying the already assembled computer. So how is that possible? It's a huge arbitrage. So I said, I'm going to do it. I did it, got the computer up and running. And then I said, I'm going to hand out signs. They're going to say, Jim, I'll make you a computer and I'll give you a warranty.
Yep.
And it'll be 30% cheaper than what you could buy from the school. And I'm making them, he then pays 2 of his people across the hall from him in the dorm to move into other people's dorm room because he needs storage. Okay, do you love this? Okay?
I love it
because this is you. Okay, just like a 1-800-Flowers, right? And then he goes home for the break, and his father says, "What the hell are you doing? You got to focus on your studies. You're selling computers out of the dorm room.
Yep.
Cut it out." And Michael says, "Well, Dad, what if I told you I could make $160,000? This is in the mid '80s. What if I told you I could make $160,000 a year doing this?" And the father, 160. All right. Well, if you're going to make $160,000 a year, I mean, I would reconsider. I'm saying, Dad, it's February 1st. I've already made $160,000. And the family looked at him, and they let him out of school, and they unleashed the beast. Yep. He's one of the richest people in the world. He's one of the most charitable people in the world. He's the most kind person.
Look what his activities have done for the city of Austin.
Yes, no question.
I mean, the big influences on the city of Austin, from my distant perspective, is South by Southwest, which he was involved with, and Michael Dell.
Yeah. So I just got lucky. I was a deal captain on the deal in August of 1993. I mentioned his laptops were catching on fire. He had to remake the company.
Yep.
And so he came to Goldman to raise $300 million in the middle of the summer.
That was a big amount of money.
Yeah, it was a big amount of money, and there was nobody around in the summer, and I got staffed as his deal captain, and it was the last 2 weeks of August, and I was hustling around the city with him, and it became the deal of the year, by the way, because we raised the money. We got J.P. Morgan to come into it, and that was a big deal, their investment management group, and we raised the money, and he fixed the company, and those convertible bonds, I think they went 3-1 in 18 months.
Wow.
And so everybody was happy, especially him. And when I left to start Oscar Capital, he was an investor. He put money in the firm. He actually owned a small piece of the firm when we sold it to Neuberger Berman, and he rolled that dough into Skybridge. So yes, he was a very big influence on my career. He's a tremendous person. And I used to tease him. I said, we're separated by 1 year in age and only about $300 billion. But other than that, you and I, other than that, you and I are exactly the same.
He didn't show up in the poly suit, did he?
No, but I don't know. But I will tell you, like you said, he did remake himself. He had one eye that was going in. He had to get the operation. He's just but he's a great, and he's an autodidact. This is a big lesson for people that listen to you. Teach yourself. learn. If you don't like reading, get on YouTube. You can teach. Elon Musk says it better than me, but you can teach yourself anything now over the internet through your smartphone.
Yep.
Just if you have an idea, you want to learn about physics, you'll find it on the internet, or you'll read it in a book. Teach yourself. Come prepared.
I think the biggest opportunity that the internet and all the data that we have access to is exactly that. That if you're curious and you're interested and you can read, you can learn anything.
Amen. Amen.
And I find, there's a book I'd like to read. Well, I read a book or two a week, but I can't get to all the books I want to.
Yeah.
But if it's an interesting subject, I can go on YouTube and look up the author and see him do an interview about it and get the essence of what he's writing about.
Yeah, and so that's my podcast, actually. So I'm doing two podcasts now. One is with Katty Kay, the famous British journalist, on U.S. politics. That's sort of an election special.
She seems like a terrific person.
She's great. She's great. She's very, very...
I can listen to her all day.
Yeah, me too. And it's sort of upstairs, downstairs. It's Downton Abbey, although I'm in the service quarters, okay? She's got that posh voice.
Oh, yeah.
And so
everything proper about it.
Exactly. So it's posh Katty Kay and it's lower class Scaramucci, brought to you by The Rest is Politics, right? But so that's a cool podcast and I enjoy that. But my labor of love is open book. Yep. And so what I do is I interview authors on my podcast. And so I find that authors are fascinating. And before inflation, Jim, I would tell somebody for $10 and 10 hours, you can get 10 years of experience in a book. You can grab a book on a topic and you can learn so much. And so I am right now, you didn't ask me what I'm reading, but I'll tell you anyway. I have decided to read everything related to Abraham Lincoln. Mm-hmm. I have found that I didn't do enough study of Lincoln as a kid. Jay Winnick has a great book called April 1865 about this month in our history where we could have broke into this fragmented, fractured society where we could have stayed unified the way Lincoln wanted us to. And the reason I'm reading about this today is because we do have a lot of polarity in the country. We do have a lot of tribalism. And reading the language of Abraham Lincoln, you see why your ancestors and my ancestors came to this country, because Lincoln writes about the country.
He wasn't an overnight success.
Oh my God, he was bludgeoned.
Yeah.
You know, Seward, who ran New York and was decidedly in his own mind the favorite to be the first Republican Party nominee for the presidency, was bested by Lincoln. And he's like, who is this SOB, this like small-time lawyer, small, and a failure. He failed at everything. But here, again, not educated, but literally probably the smartest on social sciences and the smartest and the most adept politician. Stanton, who despised him. He was Secretary of War. Lincoln used to call him Mars, the goddess of war, the god of war. When he died, the morning, Lincoln died at 7:22 a.m. on the 15th of April. He was shot the evening prior, April 14th, but he died on the 15th of April in the morning. And at the moment of his expiration, Stanton said, now he belongs to the ages. And he looked around in the room and he says, there is the finest specimen of leadership that the world has ever seen. You have to think about that, right? So there was an intersection of humbleness and self-awareness and humor, and brilliance and insight into how to think about leadership and how to think about the country that he was leading. And so I'm spending a lot of time reading about Lincoln at this point in my life, in my career.
So far in your exploration of the life and times of Abraham Lincoln, has it changed how you think about leadership?
Yes. 100%. And I would recommend a book, if you don't mind. Donald T. Phillips wrote a book called Lincoln on Leadership. Uh-huh. And Lincoln's leadership style, I have probably, if I'm being self-critical, I've been probably too much of a control freak. I'm probably too much of a micromanager. And Lincoln would say that creates a funnel. So if all decisions have to come through you, you're slowing down all the decision making. You're better off empowering, delegating, creating autonomy for people, and empowering them and being a servant leader as opposed to a command control leader.
We put our heart into everything we do. We are farmers, bakers, florists, and makers who grow and create with a passion. Made with love at every step of the way. Because at the end of the day, we know you're sending more than a gift. 1-800-Flowers, share with love.
Public figure.
Yeah.
You're running a firm.
Mm-hmm.
Does that dictate what your leadership style is? Because being a public figure as you are, it draws positive attention to your fund and what it does, so it attracts capital opportunities at least.
Yeah.
The negative side of that is if you're on an issue that isn't popular, it might cause capital flight.
Well, listen, I mean, really, you have to make a decision in life. I've decided that I'm going to be a public figure. I'm going to express my political opinions. I do this in my own mind, not because I think it's going to have that much of a significant impact. I just want to be on record.
But you learned the value, we've had this conversation, you've learned the value of fame. And even
cuts
if
both ways.
Even if it's infamy, it caused trouble. The most important thing to you is your relationship.
Yeah, no question. It cuts both ways. It's hurt aspects of my family life. It set back my marriage. But the good news is Deirdre and I are probably closer than we've ever been. Knock on wood. It cuts both ways. Yeah. It's certainly helped me. I will tell you that I've had a more interesting life since the White House firing.
Yep.
I've been in the celebrity Big Brother house. I've jumped out of helicopters in Jordan. I've done reality television. I've written books. I've been able to.
You got to be a bunkmate of Mike Piazza.
Mike Piazza and I slept in a tent in Jordan for 10 days together, scared out of our minds. Danny Amendola was on that trip with us, the wide receiver from the Patriots. But here's the thing. I'm totally cool with it, because if you go in that direction, expect to get hit.
Yep.
Like, you can't be in the NFL, you put the NFL helmet on, the NFL uniform on.
You're going to get dirty.
You're going to get a concussion, Jim.
Yeah.
Unless you're a place kicker. Maybe a place kicker doesn't get, but I'm just saying, you're going to get a concussion if you work in the NFL.
Yep.
If you go into politics, you're going to get hurt. Some operative is going to go into your Wikipedia page and switch it all up and make you look like a demon and two-dimensionalize you. They're going to do that to you. And if you're okay with that, it's a very interesting and a very cool life. If you're not okay with it, get as far away from it as possible.
So toward that, you're very outspoken about Trump and his fitness for office, in your opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, well, let me say this to you. He has stated publicly that he's going to persecute his enemies. He told two of his defense attorneys, both of which are no longer with him, one is a close personal friend of mine, that he wants to use the FBI as the Gestapo. Now, what the guy also said is the good news is Trump doesn't understand history, so he doesn't even know what the word Gestapo means, but he says this. He says that he wants to take FCC licenses away. He says, and he's got advertising, that he wants to have a unified Reich, whatever that means. In the same advertisement, he said he's going to set up deportation centers and he's going to move 15 million people out of the United States. So this is the dark elements of what he's saying. Now, you can agree with me or disagree with me. I'm just going to say this to your listeners. You have 40 of us that have gotten together. It's Esper.
40 ex-cabinet or team
Esper,
members.
Milley, Kelly, Tillerson.
These are people who were very close to him.
Very close to him. They were right in the vortex.
Chairman of the Joint Chiefs.
Right in the vortex. They got to see him operate. They got to see what he did as a leader, the opposite of Abraham Lincoln, by the way. And then you look at that and you say, okay, can I accept policies that I may disagree with, but go with the institutions of our democracy and the system that we have in place, the system that your ancestors came to the country for? And I would say yes to that. And here's something I want to tell your listeners. They should really listen. Please listen to this. It's the only thing you listen to on this podcast. This country has no hereditary memory of fascism. When you're in the Great Britain, you go see the Blitz, the Churchill war cabinets on field trips. When you're in France, you go to Normandy. When you're in Germany, you head to Eastern Poland to see Auschwitz. And the specter of fascism 80 years later is infiltrated in the system, in the veins of the people. So the UK, they say Trump, Biden, 75% say no, never Trump. Mm-hmm. Because they know what the specter is of an autocrat.
We don't.
We don't. We have no institutional memory. Franklin Roosevelt put down the first America First movement in the late 30s, and that was Lindbergh, and that was Huey Long,
Yep.
Father Coughlin, and Roosevelt was successful in manhandling them. And he had the skills of a dictator. One of his colleagues said this. I think Morgenthau said this about him, the Secretary of Treasury. Roosevelt has the skills and the charisma of a dictator, but the good news is he's on our side. He's on the side of the democracy,
Yep.
right? And so he beat it back. And so when Trump talks with the placebos and Trump talks with the scapegoating, okay, and Trump does all of the levers that we've seen in the past that creates movements based on hatred
Yep.
rather than unity, I get it. You could look at that and say, hey, I want the America of yesterday. Hey, he's pro-business. I'm watching hard right media, and Joe Biden's a socialist, even though we have the highest stock market performance in history. We can go through all this stuff, but he's a danger. And I'll say what Esper has said, Liz Cheney has said. I will accept policies that I don't agree with to keep the integrity of the system together and wait out Donald Trump until we get a Republican candidate that wants to live in a democracy and respect the system. And I will tell you, his team believes in something called unitary executive power, which basically means they want to weaken the other two branches of government and they want to empower the executive. And that is a very dangerous thing, because the way you got successful and I got successful is in a very flat, decentralized power structure as it relates to the government. And I can point to times in history, you centralize authority, you get oligarchy and kleptocracy at the top, and you get a lack of predictability in the laws. And once the laws go, the capital flow goes, and the businesses get demolished. It works in the beginning. The trains did run on time in Italy
Yep.
for a few years, and then it ends in disaster. And so I'm
Who will
not.
serve
I'm
in the
not.
next cabinet if
Well,
it's Trump?
well, I see. This is the thing where I'm a contrarian. A lot of people on TV say, "Well, you know, Yosemite Sam, Bugs Bunny, and Roadrunner are going to serve in his cabinet, be a bunch of winklings and people that are just his loyalists." I don't believe that. Trump is too much of a name dropper and a status seeker,
Yep.
and there are too many people compelled to go into the government, and so he will hire names that are recognized.
Because they're patriots?
A combination of things. Well, listen, I write about it in my book. I went in for power, and I went in for ego, and I went in for pride. And then there you go. I'm sorry to admit all those things to people, but I did do that. Doesn't reflect well on me, but I write about it honestly in the book.
Yep.
You may be a better person than me, but I said, oh, wow, I'm going to have some power. I could affect change. I thought it would be good change. And I went in because it fit my narrative, Jim. I grew up blue collar, Tufts Harvard, Goldman, built a couple successful businesses.
Yep.
Now I can go work for the American president. My wife hates Trump almost as much as Melania, okay? There are guys that worked in the cabinet that probably hate him more than Melania, okay? I mean, it's like I use her as the standard of hatred for this nut, okay? But my wife told me, don't do this. You worked on the campaign as a volunteer. You're like oil and water. You'll be fighting with him. And
But
he's
I
not going to
remember-
like your personality because of your outspokenness.
Exactly, because there's only one voice.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're considering working for Donald Trump, there's one light on the stage. It's on him. You better get backstage in a hurry. And by the way, this is the thing that a lot of these guys said about him. You know, Tom Bossert said to me, hey, he can't run the organization because it's got to all be about him. And so there's no decentralization, there's no delegation, and everybody's frozen, fearful they're going to get tweeted about.
You're at a rally,
Yeah.
and you said, okay, let me just go take a walk
In
around.
New Mexico, Albuquerque, New Mexico. You have a good memory, by the way.
And what did you feel then? What did you experience in those conversations?
Well, you know, I told you this, and this was a big moment for me because one of the things that happens to you when you get some measure of success, you start hanging out with successful people, and then you get the collective biases of who they are.
Who you're around, yeah.
Right, exactly. The same way if you're in the union, you're shoveling stone, you're getting their collective biases. But that was an epiphany for me because I went into the crowd in New Mexico and I said, hey, why are you here? And this is sort of like a composite of what was told to me, but this one gentleman said, look, I lost my job at the factory. My father's okay. He worked at that factory for 30 plus years. He's got a pension. I don't. I'm now unemployed. I was working at Lowe's. I had a job delivering pizza. I got laid off from both of those. My mother's a dental hygienist. My wife's a dental hygienist. He said, I'm looking for a job. Trump's going to bring the jobs back. And then he said something to me. He said, you think you're in New Mexico, but let me tell you what, New Mexico? Okay, that would be Mexico. And we lost 65,000 factories in this country after the signing of NAFTA. We hollowed out these areas. We deindustrialized, demanufacturing centered these areas.
And that's why the red-blue map is so starkly in contrast.
I believe that. And this is the thing I would say, and I've said this to the Democrats. This man's grandfather and his great-grandfather voted for Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Lyndon Johnson, perhaps Jack Kennedy. Yeah. But they're now voting for Donald Trump because the establishment created a vacuum. And there's a good 25% of the people in this country that once were aspirational blue-collar people like you and me. They've now become economically desperational. Like or dislike Donald Trump, he saw that. He's an avatar for their anger. Now, the irony of the whole thing is Joe Biden has presented policy solutions. Trump never did. Joe Biden signed that Infrastructure Act. He signed the Remanufacturing, the Reshoring Act. Yep. He's got the CHIPS Act. But the problem for Joe Biden, he does not look like your grandfather, Jim. He looks like your great-grandfather. Yeah. Okay, and this is his problem. He also broke his foot. And he was told to leave his foot in one of those big immobilized foot cast boots. And they told him 10 weeks. He put it on for 2 weeks. He didn't like the way he looked. And now he's hobbling around on that foot. He can't put any weight on that foot. And so it makes him... It makes him look older. It makes, oh my God, he's going to fall down, or oh my God, he's too old for the job. And so he's up against that, and he's not young and spry where he can get out there and explain this economic agenda that he's had, which has been by and large successful for the people that are ironically supporting Donald Trump.
Let's shift gears. I read a couple of months ago the book by Michael Lewis.
Yep.
On the whole crypto world and FTX.
Yep. Going Infinite.
I read everything Michael Lewis writes.
Mm-hmm. He's a great writer.
So smart about so many things, and can make a really complicated subject seem understandable even to a novice. I came away sympathetic for Sam at the end of that book. You got to know him. You put on a conference with him in the Bahamas.
Yep.
You told me about him.
He bought a piece of my company.
He did, and so I'd love to hear about that. But what's your attitude about him? You went down to the Bahamas. You went down to Albany, the Albany club where Sam and team lived. And I remember it was a Tuesday. You flew down, and he was about to be indicted. And you went down to see if you could help.
Well, for some reason, November 8th is always a big day for me. So if it's a Tuesday, November the 8th, if there's a bomb shelter in your house, Jim, I'm coming. I'm going to hide in your bomb shelter because November 8th, 2016, Donald Trump was elected. November 8th, Tuesday, November the 8th, in 2022, I went to the Bahamas because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Yeah, I believed what Fortune and Forbes magazine had written, that he was worth $20 billion.
I remember you telling me this. I never heard of him. You told me, there's a guy who's already worth $10 or $20 billion in crypto. And I was like,
he just signed.
I never heard of him until you told me
naming
about
rights, FTX Arena in Miami. Yep. He was building this colossal exchange, had 15% of the crypto trading business. He was this close to getting the margin license from the CFTC, would have competed with the New York Stock Exchange and the CME.
How did you first meet him?
So unsolicited, somebody that was a mutual friend of ours said that he wanted to meet me because he had heard about my conferences. And I said, okay, no problem. I'll meet him. Where do I meet him? He said, we got to do it over Zoom. He lives in Hong Kong. Okay, what time? 9 p.m. I said, 9 p.m.? I said, no problem. I went in my basement. This guy comes on. He's got the big, afro, and he's got the headset on. And he looks like Mary's brother from Something About Mary. I thought he was going to say, where's my baseball? We had that. And I'm looking at him. And he starts talking to me in that staccato brilliance. And I'm listening to him. And he says, look, I'm trying to create a bridge from decentralized finance into traditional finance. You've got these big conferences. I want to come and speak at the conference. Can I sponsor the conference? And I said yes. And I said,
this is the SALT conference.
SALT conference. I said, listen, the The second tier of sponsorship is still available at $750,000. If you want to come, these are the services I can provide for you, and I can help you. Okay, no problem. I'd like to do that. Could you send me your wiring instructions? I said, no problem. I got off the phone. I sent him the wiring instructions and the sponsorship agreement. The next day, he had the sponsorship agreement signed, and the money was wired. I said, whoa.
24 hours.
24 hours. On Wall Street, there's an expression, fast pay makes fast friends. So he got my attention. I then called him, and he said, I'm looking to do XYZ. I had a couple ex-Goldman guys that started a business in the United States to trade crypto and crypto derivatives. And I said to Sam, do you want to meet these guys? He said, yes, I do. He flew to Miami. During the Bitcoin conference, he met those guys. He bought their company. It became FTX US. Okay, and so now he's like loving me, right? Because I'm now helping him grow his business. He comes to SALT, and you've been to SALT. He has a spectacular time.
Just to set the stage, SALT is a conference about alternative investments that you created in the wake of President Obama, criticizing Wall Street people from running what he called boondoggles in Las Vegas.
Exactly.
And you thought he missed the point of what was really going on there.
And by the way,
and they were hurting the bakers and the taxi drivers and the room cleaners.
Yeah, exactly. All the blue-collar people got hurt by that. And by the way, in fairness to Barack Obama, I don't think he meant it. He was just trying to say, hey, guys, I'm giving you billions of dollars through TARP. Can you calm down a little bit, right? But he really hurt the city because all the big banks pulled out.
And in the wake of that, you said, I'm going to bring a conference.
I'm going to bring a conference there. Yeah, I said, somebody asked me, well, what was the brilliant vision of the conference? I said, well, I thought I was going out of business. I was going to end up as a third-party marketer, and I needed a conference. That's really the vision. That was really the grand vision, okay?
But 2,000 plus people
became a big event.
For the biggest name speakers in the world. And
it became a big event.
For a capitalist festival of sorts for several days in Las Vegas, and now here in New York.
I moved it to New York after COVID because it was easier for traveling purposes. We may go back to Vegas or do it some other place at some point. But Sam came, called me after the conference and said, I want to do a 3-year sponsorship with you, and I want to sponsor your conference in Singapore, and I want to sponsor your conference in Abu Dhabi. And I said, okay, great. I'm going to send my team down to the Bahamas to meet with you. He'd already moved from Hong Kong to the Bahamas, and we got it going.
And he asked you to help him put on a conference on crypto, focused on crypto in the Bahamas.
Yeah, and that should have been a tell for me, actually, because, well, that was the greatest conference that I've ever been to in my life. I've never been to a conference like that. And, he had an unlimited budget. The Baha Mar Hotel, as I told my staff, Sam gave you Sons of Bees an unlimited budget, and you exceeded it. I've never seen a conference like this. It was just unbelievable. And
How many people did you?
No, we had 3,000 people. We had all the networks there. We had Tony Blair and Bill Clinton. I mean, you want to talk about a name-dropping, jock-sniffing festival? That was that conference. And he had David, he had all these FTX guys, Kevin O'Leary, he had Orlando Bloom, Katy Perry. It was a great event, and it was really well done. And then
And you two co-hosted it.
We co-hosted it, okay? I was in my suit, he was in his shorts, and we co-hosted the event.
Was that the polyester suit, or are you
No, I'm in Brioni. Hey, baby, I'm in Brioni now, okay? Come on. My Brioni and Armani, I'm a little boxy but good. I'm like a Volvo, boxy but good. But any event, the funny thing, I opened up the conference, and I said, I'm in a suit. And I said, the only other people in suits here are the politicians and the security guards for the politicians. Look at you people. You're the worst dressed people I've ever met. I mean, so open it up, right? And the Prime Minister of the Bahamas really loved that because it was true, okay? But here's the thing. He's a nice man. Mike Novogratz, who's a billionaire, founder of Galaxy, very close friend of mine, said to me the other night, he was a nice man. He was a gentle guy, and I liked him. And I write about that in the book.
I think it's so foolish that he's in jail for 30 or 40 years.
Listen. He made mistakes.
I think we need an enlightened look at sentencing.
Oh, okay. He made mistakes. Well, we have to remember something though. He did.
Everyone's getting their money back, Anthony.
Okay, but he didn't take anybody's advice. Okay, the advice was settle with the government. Negotiate with the government. The 3 people that played out, they didn't get sentenced.
Oh, no?
No, he's the only one. because he said, no, I'm not going to settle with you. The Southern District said, well, if you go to court, here are the sentencing guidelines if you're convicted. He said, no problem. I'll take my chances in court. And so he was convicted. And so now they sentenced him. And by the way, on the guideline, on the grid, you understand how this works, he got the lowest notch on the grid. It was,
Yeah.
it was 25 to 35 years. The judge gave him the 25. Now here's the bad news for Sam. You have to serve 80 in a federal
90%?
85.
85.
Yeah, so the minimum of 20 years in jail. But listen, you're bringing up very interesting points. The money's coming back. It was misallocation of funding, which is fraud.
And he gave
it
away
wasn't-
$40 million in political donations. Anyone give it back?
50.
50?
I'm not aware of anybody that gave it back. But here's the thing I would say. Could he have a sentence commutation at some point? I hope so.
Yeah.
Michael Lewis and I differ on this. I've read Going Infinite, and I talked to Michael for the book, and I had Michael at the event, and we sat with each other, and I like Michael. But I think Michael didn't 100% own up to the fraud that was perpetrated. When I read the book,
Yeah.
it was like almost like an amicus brief for Sam,
Yes.
for the jury to read. And Michael, and I understand why he did that, because Michael said to me in November when I came back from the Bahamas, Michael said to me, hey, if he's guilty of fraud, I'm not going to write the book. And so he couldn't convince himself that he was guilty of fraud because that book was being written. You see what I mean?
He already had everything invested. And the
of
story
course.
needed to be told.
The story needed to be told. And he's a beautiful storyteller. And I have sympathy for Sam. Sam hurt me. Okay, Sam hurt my reputation. I had 2 financial obituaries written about me, one by the New York Post, one by Bloomberg. He really hurt me. He hurt my business. I had billions of dollars leave Skybridge as a result of my association with him. I still have sympathy for Sam. Well, the bankruptcy estate owns 30% of our company. They have non-voting rights. We have full control of the company, me specifically. And also the way it was set up, because Sam wanted to buy the whole company. And I said, why don't we start at 30?
Yep.
I'll give you an option to buy the whole company. He doesn't have any preferential treatment, and he has no minority shareholder rights. So as I said to my lawyers,
the estate is sitting there and it has an interest in your company, and when you decide to do, when you decide to do something with it, they'll participate.
And by the way, if you want to, if I end up selling, you'll own, the people can sell alongside of me, or if you want me to buy it back from you, I will, but I have to buy it back from you at a low price because you guys hurt me, and Sam hurt me. And so I think it'll get resolved. I think they have bigger fish that they're frying right now. I think the very good news is everybody's getting their money back. Yeah. This was a small piece of capital on the scale of things.
Sure.
And I do think it gets resolved in the next 24 months. But the good news for me is we're back. If clients...
And now crypto's been very good for Skybridge.
Yeah, no question. Our assets
you have a crypto fund.
We have a crypto fund. We have a core fund of funds. We have a private equity fund now that we call SURF, which stands for Skybridge Unicorn Recovery Fund, all doing well, knock on wood. But Jim, listen, I've been humbled by life. I've been humbled by markets. We're doing well right now. That's a state of fun, but I also know it's an impermanent state. We go high and lows.
In your life, in most lives, you're involved in a bunch of different things. They're either all good or all bad at the same time.
100%.
Your marriage is good. Your family's good.
Yeah, 100%.
The love of your kids.
Yep.
Your businesses are doing good. Your brand is in a good place. But when something goes bad, they all go bad.
100%. And by the way, I'll add this to it. If you're high profile and something starts to go bad, if it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah.
So the reporters will write the negative story. So Skybridge lost 39% in 2022. Going to write 20 stories.
I don't see a lot written about you being up so much.
No, we're up. I don't know. We're up 180% in the coin fund. We're up 35% in my core fund. No one's going to write that story, and that's fine.
If it bleeds, it leads. I love that.
If it bleeds, it leads.
I'm going to put it on my list of things I've stolen from you.
Bleeds, it leads. You're bleeding. It's leading. It's going to be the front page story.
Yeah.
If you're doing great, we have no interest in that.
So you wrote the book. How's it doing?
Well, we just launched it. The
boxes arriving in the basement?
The boxes have arrived in the basement, so that we've got good rankings. But what's interesting is Amazon, the editors at Amazon have characterized this as business humor. And so it's number 3 in business humor.
I like that.
Right? So it's just some funny stuff in the book because I write very openly
And that's
about what happened.
So it's entertaining, so people have a better shot at learning.
And here's the thing about this book, Jim. I wrote it in lessons, and I tried to limit these lessons to 3 to 6 pages because I know how people are. And you could open the book in the middle, and you could start reading, no problem. You could start at the beginning or the end, no problem. They're just lessons. And it's just, okay, I got my you-know-what kicked.
Yep.
I've had my highs and lows in life. Here are 25 lessons that I have learned.
Yep.
And by the way, if you read the book, some of it doesn't reflect well on me. I made colossal decision-making mistakes.
But you own it.
Well, I own it. Well, the guy, Rosanna Scotto, is a very close personal friend of mine. I was on the Good Day New York show. The guy from the NFL, Kurt, I don't remember his Menafree, I think his name is. He's on the NFL Today show. He's like, Donald Trump, Sam Bankman-Fried, I got to ask you this question. Do you think you have good judgment? and I looked at him. I said, well, I like you. I don't know. Is that good judgment? I happen to think very highly of you. But he came right back at me and said, well, Rosanna thinks that's bad judgment. but the point I'm making is...
If you're in the game...
Yeah, but I've had a lot
There's going to be splashes.
Yeah, so I also know Jim McCann. He's got a sterling reputation. In other words, the point is... They picked the 2 people that I got wrong, and we're not mentioning the 1,000 people that I got relationships with that are helping me with my business. Fine. I'm a high-profile guy. Yeah. When bad things happen, you go right to the front page, and you got to learn to live with it, and you got to accept it.
So many lessons from you, Anthony. You're a generation younger than me, but and our families are entwined. My full disclosure, my youngest son, Matt, worked for you for 10 years.
I love him.
It was the greatest education he ever got.
And he's doing great. And Matt's doing great. And I love Matt's independence. And he's a very funny guy. He must have got his sense of humor from Mary Lou McCann.
Obviously.
Okay. And the looks, too, I might add. The looks.
Obviously. Anthony, you're a terrific guy.
Hey,
I think there's so much to be learned from you.
Think the world of you. You know that. And I'm proud to be here. And I consider you one of my very close friends, and I'm grateful for our relationship. Really am grateful for it, Jim.
Thanks for sharing your wisdom and humor with our community today.
You're the man.
Go to 1-800-Flowers.com.
Find the perfect gift.
And wow the people you love.
Wow. This is amazing.
Whether you want to say happy birthday,
So cute.
Or I love you.
I love you too.
thinking of you.
Wow.
Go to 1-800-Flowers.com.
Celebrate the people you love.
Well, I hope you enjoyed what you heard, and I know I'll be sharing it forward. I hope you get to as well. Let's keep the conversation going. Follow me along on Twitter at Jim1800Flowers and on LinkedIn at Jim McCann. Hope to talk to you soon.